Hello there, my fandom friends. My name is Jenna, and welcome to my channel. I've never made a voiceover video before, so this will be new for both of us. I've never had the urge to create a video like this before either, partially because I am very introverted, but with all of the new Star Wars content that has been coming out over the past year, I've been really wanting to talk about it more and more. In this video, I'll be discussing the first 4 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. More specifically, my personal opinions and thoughts about each episode, some Easter eggs I picked up on, and some predictions for the second half of the first season. There won't be much breakdown of the episodes in this video, so I would highly recommend you watch the episodes before listening to my thoughts. I don't want to spoil anything for you, and there will be spoilers ahead.
So it begins.
Episode 1. I absolutely love the flashbacks that we've been getting in the first 4 episodes. Some of my favorites are seeing flashbacks of young Boba holding his dad's helmet after Mace beheaded him. After watching the Clone Wars and the trauma that Boba went through over his father's death really made me curious about seeing more of his journey through that in this show, especially now that he's older and more experienced. In the Clone Wars, Boba always seemed quite ready for revenge after losing his dad from Mace.
Why should I help anybody? I've got no one.
So seeing those flashbacks in this show from Attack of the Clones really makes me believe that this is foreshadowing for potentially seeing Mace at the end of the season, or possibly in a future season. Maybe this will eventually lead to some showdown between the two of them, maybe?
I see now I've done terrible things. But you started when you murdered my father. I'll never forgive you.
To me, the wanted revenge between Boba and Mace is very similar to the Obi-Wan and Darth Maul revenge scenario. The Clone Wars really expanded on both of these entirely different traumatic experiences between both groups of characters, and I'm really hoping we're going to get to learn more in these new live-action shows from both perspectives. Seeing Boba inside of the Sarlacc pit, as well as how he managed to get out of it, was something I, and probably so many other fans, have been waiting to see for a very long time. I'm glad this wasn't just skimmed over because I think it's very detrimental to see, including all the details of the scarring on Boba's body from the Sarlacc's digestive acids. The connection this show is bringing between the Trandoshans and Wookiees is very exciting for me. The only other place I've seen the hate between these species is from the Clone Wars. I'll get more into detail about this later in the video, but in one of the scenes in this first episode, we see a Trandoshan come in with what looks like a Wookiee pelt. This is our first clue and potential foreshadowing to the multiple occurrences of seeing Trandoshans and Wookiees throughout the next couple episodes, and I'm guessing probably throughout the rest of the season. Overall, I thought this episode was a great start to the show, and I was very satisfied with it. I love how we're getting the flashbacks of Boba Fett's life through the Bacta tank instead of just Boba randomly thinking about flashbacks in the middle of a scene. It's a very creative and fun way to implement the flashbacks so that the audience can get more context while Boba is fully healing. Episode 2. Something I really appreciate about this show is the more we're learning about the Tusken Raiders and their tribes. Before watching The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, I'd always seen the Tusken Raiders as being nasty and mean, mainly because that's how we've always seen them portrayed in past movies and shows. This show has made me realize that the Sand People of Tatooine are actually quite loyal, caring, and intelligent. They have their own unique way of life, and they've actually been quite successful at surviving over time. Probably my favorite part of this episode was seeing Boba's adventures to the tree and back. There were so many flashbacks and symbolism in those couple minutes that probably meant so much. I'm thinking that the tree symbolized Boba's family tree, which would make sense because there was one big tree which could symbolize Jango and a smaller tree that could symbolize Boba. If this is the case though, it made me wonder why weren't there 2 small trees, since we learned from the Bad Batch that Omega is Boba's sister.
Omega is a pure genetic replication.
How many clones like that exist?
To my knowledge, there's only one other. A male clone, codenamed Alpha, later referred to as Boba. Since he disappeared at the start of the war, that makes Omega the sole living source of Fett's raw genetic material.
Maybe this flashback proves that Boba doesn't know that he has a sister yet. And if that's the case, and if I'm interpreting this correctly, this scene is actually extremely important. If Boba didn't know about Omega before falling into the Sarlacc pit, the only connection Boba would have to Omega at this point is through Fennec, but only if she told him about Omega. Although this part was extremely informative, it also made me very curious and confused at the same time. I love seeing the flashbacks of younger Boba watching his dad leave on Kamino. Any flashback on Kamino brings me my own flashbacks of when Kamino was destroyed in the Bad Batch, which was just so heartbreaking.
That's rough, buddy.
Seeing the Pikes introduced actually really surprised me when I watched this episode. However, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If Jabba were ruling Tatooine, the Pikes probably wouldn't have tried to mine for spice. Since we know Bib Fortuna wasn't the best ruler, Tatooine probably got taken advantage of by different crime syndicates or common criminals. The Pikes also brought back another huge element of the Clone Wars and the connection the Pikes had with Darth Maul. From the Clone Wars and from Solo, we know that Darth Maul was the leader of Crimson Dawn. During the Clone Wars, he recruited the Pikes, Black Sun, and Dryden Voss. From Solo, we know that Kira took over after Darth Maul died during the Rebels timeline. Understanding this history may be important for future episodes since we suspect Kira is keeping Crimson Dawn alive still at this point in the timeline. Episode 3. I'm going to be completely honest, I thought that the group of half-human and half-droid teenagers was a bit random for Star Wars, especially for a planet like Tatooine. But again, this might have something to do with, now that Jabba isn't in power, Tatooine is falling apart in some ways, but it was still a bit unusual and harder for me to take in. This might have worked better on a different planet, maybe like Coruscant. On a brighter note, I absolutely adored how we got to learn more about Rancors in this episode. I had no idea they were so loving, protective, and respectful toward the people they love. It reminded me of a dog, which was so cute. It makes sense why the Rancor trainer in The Revenge of the Sith was so emotional when Luke killed his Rancor. I'm excited to see how Boba's Rancor will be with him and if they will potentially fight alongside together in the future. The Meiluran fruit was also an amazing touch. Seeing that fruit immediately made me think back to Rebels, to a specific connection with Hera, since Meiluran is her favorite kind of fruit. I almost wonder if that was some kind of foreshadowing for seeing Hera in a live action soon. Another cool mention was the Witches of Dathomir, which was a large part of Season 3 in the Clone Wars. As you'll find out, I love it when the live-action Star Wars shows and movies connect with the animated series in these ways. Episode 4. Now I'm gonna return to the quarrel that I was talking about earlier between the Trandoshans and Wookiees. So as we learned in the Clone Wars, Trandoshans actually enslaved Wookiees, as well as placed them on an island to later hunt and kill them. And we saw this toward the end of Season 3 in Clone Wars when Chewbacca was there with Ahsoka and some other Jedi kids. When Chrysanthemum ripped the arm off the Trandoshan, that was such a great detail. This brought me back to when Han Solo warned C-3PO that Wookiees rip off arms of those they don't like.
It's because a droid don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Wookiees are known to do that.
And don't worry, since Trandoshans are very reptile-like, their limbs will grow back. We finally got to see exactly what happened when Boba saved Fennec after Toro and Din left her to die in The Mandalorian. After I saw that episode of The Mandalorian, I was so convinced that the person who walked up to her body was Cad Bane. But that's probably partially because he's one of my favorite bounty hunters. I absolutely fell in love with this character during the Clone Wars. I really hope we do see more of him in the future of Star Wars and potentially even in this show. And speaking of Cad Bane, this leads me to my next thought. It seems like the Pikes are working for someone or with someone very powerful right now, which leads me to believe that it's probably either Kira, since she is the new leader of Crimson Dawn, or Cad Bane. In the first season of The Bad Batch, we saw Fennec Shand and Cad Bane fight one another, so that could have been potential foreshadowing for this show, possibly. After hearing the Mandalorian theme song play a couple times in this episode, it made me believe that Din will for sure be in the next episode. This also makes me wonder if we will also see Bo-Katan, since we know she wants the Darksaber, which Din has. However, there was a line that Fennec said at the end of the episode that made me want to address something really quick.
Credits can buy muscle, if you know where to look.
She reminded me of The Bad Batch. As we know from the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch shows, this was a group of clones that had different defects that allowed them to work together and use their unique skills as a group. Fennec already has a connection to the Bad Batch, including Omega, since she once hunted her, so seeing them would be amazing. However, if they were in the Book of Boba Fett, that would probably spoil the next season of The Bad Batch, so I don't think that's going to happen. I just really want Boba to know he has a sister and to see some kind of connection between the two of them. Fennec seems to be the connection between Boba and Omega right now, and it's a matter of basically if she tells him the stories of when she once hunted her down or not. She might not even know too many details about Omega to even think about telling Boba, so I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. In conclusion, those were all of the main thoughts I had during the first 4 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. If you agree, disagree, or would like to comment your own thoughts and opinions, feel free to in the comment section. I love hearing from everybody and discussing our favorite fandoms as a community. Also, feel free to let me know if you like this new style of editing and the voiceover. Maybe I'll make more like this in the future. And I definitely look forward to hearing from you, so thank you so much. So for now, I hope you have a magical day, and I bid you all a very fond farewell.